This is the PR Podcast, a show about how public relations helps you tell your story to the world. We talk with great PR practitioners who have the skills, creativity, and just plain savvy to get their clients noticed. Now here's your host, Jody Fisher.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the PR Podcast. I'm Jody Fisher. Thanks for joining us. Well, hope you're doing well. Hope the new year is off to a good start. Hope the holidays were restful and you're ready to jump into 2023 if you haven't already. We want to make this the year that you get on this show as a guest. So if you want to be a guest on the PR Podcast at an upcoming episode this year, send us your pitch to be on the show. Reach out to us by on any one of our social media channels: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Probably the best way might be Twitter, but we're growing the audience on TikTok as well. Or you can go directly through my personal website, which is jodyfisherpr.com. Send us an email, send us a DM, and send us the three things that you would want to talk about if we were to book you as a guest. What are the things that you're most interested in talking about in the news-making process? Whether you are a PR person like me, if you're a person in a newsroom, maybe you're a reporter out on the street, you're a videographer, maybe you're an SEO expert, you've got a role in the news-making business. We want to hear from you. So send us a note, book yourself as a guest on the PR Podcast in 2023. We have got another terrific guest today, so let's go. Donna Loughlin is the founder of LMGPR and is known for her work with Futurists and innovators. Now, since 2002, she has launched more than 500 companies, taking them from stealth to market leaders. She's also the host of Before It Happened, a leading narrative podcast of her own, featuring visionaries and the moments, events, and realizations that inspired them to change our lives for the better. Donna excels in the realm of storytelling and uses those skills to propel new companies right into the mainstream. Donna, welcome to the PR Podcast.
Well, thank you so much for having me here, Jody.
Really appreciate you joining us. So tell us, what is a futurist?
Wow. Well, you know what? When I think of futurist, I think about looking at, some of the earlier books that I read when I was a preteen, like Ray Bradbury books and things that were really kind of the Jetson world cartoons that we might have watched. And then the Star Wars and those things that were really into the future. And being able to look at those and say people who actually can forecast where, how we might live, work, and, in some cases just breathe. And so a lot of times these futurists are kind of really geeky gadget guys. I call the Inspector Gadgets that, open up their trench coat full of really cool stuff. And other times, they're in the venture, communities where you just have a lot of very smart minded, visionaries that can pinpoint the markets that are the emerging markets that are going to be hot or not. And so I don't think there is, like, if we were to say, draw me a picture of a futurist, there's necessarily an image. It'd probably be a very Bauhaus looking metropolis type of character. Mad Max meets, Manhattan, type of, persona, because I don't think there is really a defined demographic, but I think it's really just the way they look at things. And I think one of the things that is important for us as PR people is to look at things differently sometimes as well. So futurists should push us out of our comfort zones.
Yeah, I was just going to say, we kind of are futurists ourselves in a way, in that we envision the way things could be for our clients. That's what we kind of get paid to do, is to propel them into the areas that they want to be in. I've got to imagine that some futurists these days, and probably for the last couple of decades, have also been in the areas of things like climate change or environment. I think of the terrific movie Tomorrowland with George Clooney, where they had that secret society. If you haven't seen it, the secret society of people who built like this futuristic world, where they wanted to create the future the way they saw it. And it involved everything from technology to art to you name it.
There's been a number of movies like that, like Wall-E is another example of that. That kind of makes you kind of stand back and look at things and say, geez, do I need that? Do I want that? Do I want to live that way? And asking those questions. I think as as PR people, oftentimes we're presented with things that we have to decide, is that something, do I have sentiment? Do I actually want to represent this? Does this is a brand that I believe in? Is this something that is it disruptive, or is it, the challenger brand, or it's just like a whole new category? And if I don't work on this particular project, am I going to miss out? And I remember very early on, as it was a journalism major in college, and I tore out an ad about an Appaloosa, and I took it to the editor, and I was bringing my own typewriter to a national newspaper as an intern, and I asked if we could get a computer. I created a lot of havoc. It's like, what is this, like, 19-year-old coming in here to my office that I've been running for 40 years and asking to order this very expensive computer? And needless to say, I did get my way, and we got that computer. And I became that person that had to learn it and had to basically, the revolution hadn't started. We weren't online yet. And so I don't know if that was, I was being disruptive in my adoption of wanting to have something. And I think oftentimes we have to either decide if we're going to adopt or we're going to adapt. And if we look at the music industry and how we went from my favorite vinyl to CDs to digital, that revolution happened really fast. And so if you didn't catch on, if you didn't get to the record store and buy those albums before they went, obsolete, and got the CDs, and then the CDs, and then the record stores went away, then, we basically had to adapt. And so I consider myself kind of a late adopter. I like to wait till prices drop, particularly in consumer goods. I like to see the price drop. And when it comes to even EV cars and electrification of transportation, which is a space I work in a lot, I'm a late adopter. I finally went electric, but I went at a time that felt comfortable, where I thought the market had kind of wiggled out a lot of things.
I guess that's one of the challenges, really, from a PR perspective of working with futurists, is that you've got to buy in to something, or buy into the concept of something, promoting the concept of something that isn't maybe not yet reality or not caught on. I mean, you're not selling a t-shirt. You're not selling even an experience like a ticket to a museum or something that's in the here and now. You're selling something that is either conceptual or at least far enough in the future that you've got to do a lot of education, I would imagine.
Yeah. Well, and it's comes down to the learning. We need to be really great listeners. And I think we're programmed to respond. And communicators, public relations people, particularly in journalists, which is where I started my career, we need to listen. We need to really tune in, ask questions. There's a lot of curiosity. And my father always told me, if you don't ask, you don't know. And so when I was 10, 11, 12 years old, I was toiling around with my uncles, and my family owned a publishing and newspaper business. And I was out reporting, at a very young age. And I was watching and learning from my uncles. And once I felt the confidence to be able to do that. But if we don't ask questions and we just accept, and we don't expect to maybe have some influence or some change, I think that, we want to come from a place of acceptance. But I think that we shouldn't expect, just because someone says, it's the glass is half full, or it is, the best new widget or device, or dingus is another word I haven't used for a long time, a dingus that we all need. And then if we don't question that, then we're probably not being very responsible consumers.
Yeah. And I got to imagine too, that there are, I guess you're working within industry with reporters who report on vertical industries, right? You mentioned EV car example. So you're working with all the reporters who cover that industry. But are you also working with reporters who cover futurists, or cover the sort of the more conceptual idea of what's in the future? I mean, the future of everything with the Wall Street Journal springs to mind. Are there those types of
Yeah,
reporters
for
out there?
example, like Wall Street Journal, Wired magazine, as example, looks at the innovation and the emergence of things. There's a lot of convergence and integration. So worked with a lot of early stages of my business, security, infrastructure, digital content companies. And over time, that content and the digitalization of things and the need for security and IoT smart devices made it into our home. Then it made it into our car. Houses got smarter, cars got smarter. So as a result of making these applications within key vertical markets, agriculture being smarter, transportation being smarter, homes smarter. Then there was these natural adaptation, into these vertical markets. So I think that's really interesting to see the convergence of, within these markets. It's horizontal, but there's verticalization. So I look at artificial intelligence as an example. There's artificial intelligence in medical devices, artificial intelligence in homes and on cars, in gaming and entertainment. So many different applications of AI. The same thing with augmented reality. It's being used in healthcare space. It's being used in science. It's being used in aerospace, right? And so I think what's interesting is that the people who visualize, they say these futurists that actually can imagine how you can actually apply certain things and make them meaningful and valuable. Um, I see that you have a can of WD-40 on your shelf. And that's an application I will tell you that my father, a product diehard, would have around the house. That's like we might as well have flour, sugar, eggs, right? And and sometimes you just can't mess with a good thing. So if you look at popular science and popular mechanics over the years as editorial, I think they've evolved to being in the real and now. I remember my father reading popular mechanics and letting me read why he would be, fixing something on his airplane. And then, of course, I was curious and I wanted to know, well, how do you fix the engine on the airplane, right? And if I'm going to fly a plane, which I do, I need to know how to fix that. And if I'm going to drive a car, and my father insisted that I knew how to change the oil in a tire. Most people today don't know how to change an oil in a tire in their car. But you have to go back and look at where we're from to be able to understand and look at the future where we need to go. And I think
You're
that's one
getting
of the
very
things.
zen in the art of motorcycle maintenance on me here.
Yeah.
This is great, right?
Yeah. But one of the things that's so, like, if you think about the EV versus fossil fuels, it's like Ethernet versus Godzilla or whatever. Um, you have to look at where we've been and in order to know where we're going. And I always think the same philosophy goes in a restaurant. They say you shouldn't, be a customer in a restaurant if you never worked in one. Now, I personally have never worked in a restaurant, but I do have some really great friends that are chefs. And I will guarantee you, I understand how the back and the front of the house works together. But I think that historically, if we as individuals aren't necessarily the ones that are creating and the products and the tools and the emerging markets, we can have a lot of influence though, because consumers can be really, you know, discriminating. If you look at Apple products as an example, Apple products aesthetically are aesthetic because that's how they were designed. And if you go to a Genius bar and get assistance, I've had 6, 7, 8 people, and I'm thinking, why I need all this attention? Then I realize, oh, it's part of that Apple experience, and they want you to have a positive experience. If you go to a high-end department store, it's the same scenario. You're going to get the white glove treatment. They're going to come out, they're going to offer you a glass of champagne. They're going to have you sit down in their salon. They're going to treat you with that. You go to a high-end, car dealer, same scenario. Coming up is CES. And I always think of CES as being like it's a department store for the consumer tech futurists. Go and see what's happening, right? For your home, for your car, entertainment, audio experience. Agricultural is now covered, and because all these things have come together.
I mean, we're even seeing, we talk about AI application, we're even seeing that now in public relations and in marketing, where you can input information to AI and it'll draw you a picture. It will write you a press release. It will do all these things. And while I am firmly in the camp of, the human over the machine, at the same time, the machines are quote unquote coming. So I think we have to learn how to harness them and how to make them work for us rather than having, fearing us being replaced by them. And that, I would
Yeah.
imagine, is what the futurist does. It's part of the job, is seeing how all these things can integrate. I mean, I'm thinking of something as simple as a Wi-Fi switch that I might have in my house that turns a light on and off, or maybe the Wi-Fi thermostat. It doesn't do anything that I don't tell it to do, but it makes my life easier and I don't have to think about it anymore, kind of thing. Is that kind of where the rubber hits the road with a few?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna give you my real personal perspective. I like my Nest, but I don't like Alexa and I don't like Siri. They just get a little too much into my business. And just when I said that really creepy, my big Samsung art TV lit up because it heard me say Alexa. And my TV's on now. I don't want my TV on now because I'm having a conversation with you. And so that literally that audio intelligence that just got picked up. I did, yes, I said the name. The command was heard, but I actually didn't make that command. So I think when I would in this it being selective of what we let into our personal environment, whether it's work, it's in your car, it's at home, in the classroom. I think it's we need to be we need to be subjective to what works for us, because she just
Doing the
creeped me out
P
right now.
Yeah, that would creep me out too. Yeah. And I have one. I don't have her in my house. I have the other her in my house. And I appreciate the fact that I have to throw a hey in front of there. But in any case, I digress. Let's get back to PR, right? And working with a futurist. Are there are there certain challenges of working with a future? I mean, a futurist can be so, I guess, conceptual, right? So sometimes kind of out there. Like we talked about, it's not selling a widget. It's selling a concept, or it's selling something that's in the future, because they're thinking about what is yet to come. Are there prompts that you use? Are there questions that you ask? How do you have the conversation to dig down into the story of the futurist to then get to the point of whether it's creating the pitch or the whatever?
So I mentioned kind of going back to the origin, going the history of where we've been to know where we're going. Where I really like to start with is that discovery process and my curiosity of, like, what were they doing as a child? Were they playing with Lincoln Logs or Legos? Were they painting, drawing? Were they reading sci-fi books, or were they reading Robinson Crusoe? Did they spend their first 5 years of their lives in the Congo and then lived in Manhattan? I mean, all these different, scenarios, their own unique kind of life thumbprint will impact, how they think, how they observe things, and how, they look. If we all went around looking waist high only and never looked up, we would have a very narrow perspective of the world. So understanding their perspective, what are their influences? What were their family values? What are their historical values in terms as going from, oftentimes people forget these things. And I joke, and it's true. I always say that I am a product of a Southern belle and a sailor. And that's giving a very, very narrow narrative of my parents, but it is true. My father, was a publisher, journalist himself, but before that, he was a sailor. It just sounds good to say, was a product of a sailor and a Southern belle. But it's the juxtaposition of the two. And so I think, understanding, people's original, origin and background, and then what ignited them in terms of a problem that they wanted to solve. Why would you want to bring high performance, super, sonic anything to market? What was your motivation? Did you see an explosion happen? Was it you lost a family member, or perhaps, maybe you had an illness? And so any of those types of, cause driven things could drive someone to say, you know what? I imagine the impossible and the exploration of that. So going back to what that organic moment was when they decided, and this is what I call it, the before it happened moment, is what was that before it happened moment? Which is the purpose of the podcast, is really looking for that organic moment when you say, aha, I am going to replace my 1,000 poodles, for a cat. And I am going to mortgage my house and sell all of my stuff and go out on this mission. And so whether, it's the venture capitalist I'm having that conversation with the founder's story oftentimes is what that is. The other part is to be extremely aware of what else is happening in the marketplace. So if you look at climate change and you look at conversations of the World Economic Forum and sustainability, and you look at the agricultural industry and the automotive industry and how those things might not necessarily seem like they have anything in tandem in common, but they do. So being acutely aware and discovering not just the origin, but like what is the rest of the market doing? What are behaviors within countries? What are behaviors within marketplace? So within the mobility market, particularly, which includes transportation and two wheels and four wheels and things with wings and things. There's a lot of deep research and content that comes out from the market analyst groups, from the financial community and bankers, as well as like McKinsey. Those types of organizations still are very relevant, and so looking for that content and that data to kind of fact check and validate. And then the other part I think is real important is being agile. If knowing that if you have a conversation, you're going to, if I'm having a conversation with a futurist and visionary and bringing a product to market, we can't just look insular. We have to look at the entire market segment, but we also need to look at worst case scenarios. So being agile is very important. As a pilot, one of the things that I always have to be aware of, I don't have a rear view mirror. So I constantly need to be looking for the weather is either my best friend or it's my worst enemy. And so what is my situational awareness within the understanding of the market, understanding of my customers, understanding of my competition, understanding of the financial market, understanding of things like even war, how that impacts, right? And so there's a lot of layers to that. And so once we look at all those components, then we have to stand back and say, okay, so now what's the story that we can
Fascinating.
tell?
Yeah, fascinating area that you're working in. I mean, being at the sort of the intersection of where you're at with these futurists and these ideas that you're working with, and the practical application of what you do for a living, which is public relations and storytelling and communications. Are there trends that you're aware of that we're going to see in 2023, regardless of what they may be? Are there things that are coming that you're aware of that are going to crest this year? Or
Yeah, I mean, the markets that I really keep a close watch on are, they're emerging markets, meaning that they've been around for a while, but they're becoming more mature because the productization of things are happening. So artificial intelligence will continue, to be a hot market. The applications of AI in healthcare industry, not just for entertainment, but in the healthcare industry particularly, I think is really interesting. In aerospace, sustainability is a huge category. I like to think of it as cause-driven or responsible products that are actually allowing us to be more, to be green, or more responsible, more conscious driven. And that's everything that is included in like hydro, alternative, power, not just solar power, but hydropower and intelligence, taking the intelligence and applying it into those markets, right? So there's a lot of overlays. Automotive and transportation, I love slow cooking and fast cars and fast motorcycles and planes. And so the fastest I can go is in my plane, which sometimes seems like, you're going, 25 miles an hour, depending on, where you are. But I think those are the things that kind of fascinate me still. It'll be interesting to see at CES this year, what's happening in the agricultural space, because the transformational technologies that are coming into play. I also think, another area, is the blockchain market it's changing and having it applied to pharmaceutical goods and to healthcare and to things that need to be monitored and regulated more closely. I think that's something that we're going to be seeing. We still live in this kind of weird hybrid kind of work world and a little disparate. And I'm talking to you from, my farmhouse in Ohio, but I spend, 99.9% of my time in Silicon Valley. And so when I take myself out of the Silicon Valley mode and I plant myself into the Northeast Ohio, surrounded a combination of the medical and tech industry, transportation industry, as well as agriculture. I'm kind of in like this interesting trifecta of the cross intersection of things. Silicon Valley used to be much more like that. The agriculture, for the most part, is kind of vanished over time. It's still a huge part of the economy, but it's not as smack in the Silicon Valley like it was when I was growing up as a kid. So I come to the Midwest so that I can actually recalibrate some of my creativity and clear my mind. And then I go back. And if you've read the book Chaos Monkey, I like to go back to the chaos.
Well, I mean, part of that is that we all like part of that, right? I mean, that's the life we signed up for as communicators, is we have agreed to allow a little bit of chaos into our lives. And I guess what we do is take the chaos and try to maybe control it, or at least funnel it in a particular direction. But I am fascinated with the area that you occupy and the people that you work with. So we will be watching very closely this year as the things that you were just talking about start to develop. We really appreciate you sharing all your thoughts here. We are going to segue now into the rapid fire question portion of our podcast. This is where we steal a page from inside the actor's studio, ask our guests a series of rapid fire questions, Donna. So if you've heard the show before, you know what's coming. We'll ask you for one or two word answers, whatever springs to mind first. With your indulgence, here we go. Rapid fire question number 1, Donna. What is your favorite news source?
Oh my gosh. BBC.
Oh, good one. Yeah, absolutely. Rapid fire question number 2. What is your favorite social media platform?
None of them.
That's the first time we've got that answer. That's a great answer. I love it. Rapid fire question number 3. Coffee or alcohol?
Oh, well, definitely a glass of wine.
Love it.
I've
particular kind?
never had caffeine in my life other than a tea.
Have you really?
Yeah, I don't.
No kidding.
Yeah.
All right, I'm a coffee addict, so much so that every once in a while I have to go dry. Rapid fire question number 4, Donna. What's your favorite on the run food?
Tacos.
What is it?
PR tacos. Tacos.
Oh, tacos, of course.
Yeah.
California, of course.
I'm California girl.
California,
Baja
come on,
taco.
baby. You bet. All right, sorry, I misheard that one. Rapid fire question number 5. What do you want to be after you finish this career?
Wow, long pause, right? I don't want to be a social media influencer. How about that?
We'll take that one. Donna, this has been a great conversation. Thank you so much. Please let people know how they can find you online.
Oh, LinkedIn's my favorite place to hang out. I guess that is somewhat social. I don't want to be antisocial here, but Donna Loughlin, Loughlin, LMGPR. You'll find me there. The Before It Happened show on Instagram, have to be there. And if you want to email me, donna@lmgpr.com.
Sounds great. Thanks again, Donna. And thank you, everyone, for listening. Please remember to subscribe to the show. Connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at The PR Podcast, and send us a question or a comment. Our intro is by Christopher Appold. You can find him and his fantastic photography on Instagram at Christopher_APPOLDT. Check him out there and hire him for all your photography needs. You can find me online at Jody Fisher on all the socials and on the web at jodyfisherpr.com. We'll see you next time on The PR Podcast.